My name is Liz Pierce. I am the Director of Parent Engagement for the Children's Museum of Richmond, and I lead Commonwealth Parenting as well. So today's event is a joint effort. We had an event like this last year, and it was just like this. It was very well attended. We had a lot of interest, and folks came out, so we know more people will come in, and we'll just make them come sit up front. But what we're trying to do today is give good information to families, which is what we do at the museum and we do with Commonwealth Parenting. So a few years ago, when we started thinking about getting our museum more acclimated to kindergarten readiness, we took a look at all of our exhibits, all of our programming, and realized that these first years, as you all know, are so important. And the board of the museum decided to make a concerted effort to make kindergarten readiness one of our key signature features of our museum. So we look very hard at the exhibits we have to make sure they are helping children get ready to grow and learn. We surround ourselves with people on our board and our academic advisory committees to help us learn the best ways to help children get ready for kindergarten, and we host events like this. One thing I do want to say as we get started, you may have seen in the news, Dr. Bill Bosher passed away this past week, and we're all very saddened by that. It was a shock to many of us. He was a very good friend to the museum and to our community. He served as a board member of the Children's Museum, and he was additionally on the academic advisory committee that I just mentioned. He will be sorely missed. I know you two ladies knew him as well. So he was such a force in our community. Served with had a distinguished career and will be missed. As I mentioned, today we have two of our own experts from the community as well. We want you to feel free to ask questions at the end. We're going to have a long period of time so we can all ask questions. The two gals will speak for a few minutes additionally, and then we'll just kind of open it up, very casual style, talk about different questions you all have. Just some housekeeping, there is a restroom back in the back of the building. There are men's and ladies' rooms, and then there are also restrooms back here. There's water and some refreshments back there as well if you'd like anything. Let's see, I think that's about all I had. Just want to let everybody know too, the last thing is that we have programs like this throughout the year. Commonwealth Parenting has started an RVA Parents Forum series. We had two very successful ones in the past couple months. We had bullying in October, and then we had alcohol and drugs in November. And we talked about some really tough topics that we're going through with our kids, whether they're elementary school, middle school, or high school age. These are tough topics that affect all of them. Our January topic is on divorce. It's called Divorce, the Rippling Effect, and that'll be January 13th. So I encourage you to look at our website and sign up for that as well. So, without further ado, our two gals here are, I consider them friends now. We've worked together a couple years. Amanda Surgener on the end works with the collegiate school. She's been in the education field for 24 years in various capacities. Dr. Cheryl Thomas has been in the education field for 33 years, and I'll let them tell a little bit more about themselves as well when we get started. But we're going to talk with Amanda first, and she's going to talk with us about the importance of making intentional educational choices and choosing the best fit for your child. Thank you, ladies.
Good morning. Is this on? Great. Now I am. I'm Amanda Surgener, and Liz, thank you so much. Cheryl and I enjoy doing this together. We've become partners in crime and welcome any questions, and we just want to have real forthright conversations. As Liz mentioned, I have been in the education field for quite some time, most specifically at collegiate for 20 years. And I will say that I've spent the bulk of my time working with families around issues with school choice and finding the right fit for children and for families. And it's been incredibly rewarding. And yet, I don't want to say I'm totally defined by my professional field. I think the thing I'm most proud of is that I'm a mom with 4 children. And that's sort of been the biggest blessing of my life. But as I do the work that I do, I have to say there's nothing more gratifying than having children who feel good about their environment, who feel successful in the classroom and outside of the classroom. And when it's not good, it's as painful for the parent as it is for the child. So I'm incredibly committed. I get the question a lot, Amanda, how do you work full-time and have 4 children, how do you find that balance and why do you do what you do? And I for a couple of years, I struggled with the answer to that, and it's clear as a bell to me now. I think I was profoundly influenced by some of the educational choices that my parents made for my brothers and me. And we all three started in the public school system. My father was a civil rights lawyer, a die-hard public school man, and believed that that was the right decision for our family, and it was. But as we grew and changed in terms of learning styles and needs, they shifted gears for all of us. And we all ended up graduating from independent schools, so we had the best of both worlds. Now, what I will tell you is at the time, I thought we were the most dysfunctional family in the world because my younger brother graduated from St. Christopher's, my older brother graduated from the New Community School. He was incredibly bright but severely dyslexic, and I graduated from collegiate. And I kept thinking, growing up, we have not found our niche. We just don't know what we're doing. But as I look back on it, I really applaud my parents for realizing that we were all really different and that there were options in our city that met the individual needs of each of us. And my mom is old and a little confused these days, but I actually, before coming here, said, "Mom, how did you pull that off? Why would you go through that?" And she said, "Because I wanted to do the right thing for my children." And she said, and yes, there were complications to it, but I felt that commitment. So I say that's why I wake up in the morning and feel really good about what I do, because we have great options in our city and are exceedingly fortunate. Before I begin, I would love to see how many of you are first-time parents doing the kindergarten thing. Lots of you. That's a beautiful thing. Well, let me tell you this. The fact that you are all in this room right now is an incredible testament to your commitment to your children and to your desire to do an exploration that's thorough. And I think before we have children, we make choices and decisions and they have impact and ramifications. And if you don't get it right, well, it's fine. But once you have children, you feel an ownership and a responsibility that is pretty significant. And I would put school choice up there as probably one of the most important decisions you'll make as a parent. So doing the work you're doing is essential. If I give you any advice today, I would say that take the time to get it right. And that time requires not just, don't wake up on August 15th, 2 weeks before kindergarten's about to start and say, okay, now let me figure out where we're going to go to school. You need to be a year in advance, if not a little bit more, so that you don't feel rushed or pressured, so that you can explore every single thing that's out there. And that way the pace of it can be your own. The second thing I would say is you've got to visit schools. You've got to visit independent schools, you've got to visit public schools. You cannot rely on a website, you cannot rely on a brochure. They don't do it justice. You've got to immerse yourself in the way the community operates, and that's essential. The final thing I'm going to say is you need to keep an open mind. Even if you know in your heart of hearts where you think you want to send your child, you will only reinforce that decision by looking very broadly and by doing your homework. Power is knowledge, and that way you can look in the mirror and say, I've looked at everything, and yes, this is exactly what I want to do. If I think back, and my oldest child is a senior in college, believe it or not, but I can remember our decision-making around her school choice in kindergarten, and I wish if I could go back in time that I realized that it's a private decision. I felt a little bit conflicted in our choice for her by the views of everybody else around us. I felt like pressure from parents, pressure from other parents, my parents or my children's fellow peer parents, neighbors. I felt like it wasn't necessarily a personal choice, and the thing I will say to you, it is private, it is personal. The choice you make may not resemble the choice someone else makes, and that's what's great. From a strategic standpoint, in terms of how to be thinking about this, I think the way I look at it is there's sort of three circles that create knowledge for you. The first is, who's your family? What are your family's values? What's important to you? Is a religious affiliation with a school important? Is a non-denominational school important to you? Are you interested in intense academics? Are you interested in character development? Are you interested in sort of a well-rounded general experience? How important is diversity socioeconomically and otherwise to you? That's the family circle that only you can come up with. Your second circle is your child. And I'll be honest with you, parents know children best. Now you can supplement that knowledge with feedback that you get from preschool teachers, with feedback you get from relatives. If you go through an independent school readiness program, you can get feedback from that assessment. But you need to build in your mind who your child is, what his or her strengths are, what his or her needs are, and be clear on that. And then your third circle is actually the universe of schools that exist. And I'm going to tell you, the metropolitan area is incredibly rich with good choices. You've got some of the finest public schools and some of the finest independent schools you'll find on the East Coast. You've got co-ed schools, you've got single-sex schools. You've got religiously affiliated schools, you've got non-denominational schools. You have places that are incredibly structured, and you have places that are simply self-directed learning. And what you have to do is take those three circles of your family values, who your child is, and what your universe of options are, and you've got to find what that sweet spot for your family is where those three circles are connected. And it requires thought. It requires being introspective and deciding what you need. Because what you don't want to do is settle. You never want to sort of be in a place and limp along. So if you do not want prayer in a school, do not choose a parochial school. It'll irritate you, and you don't have to. But you have to be honest with yourself about what you need and what you can live with and what perhaps you can't. Before I turn it over, if you walk out of here today and remember anything, the first piece of advice I would give is clarity takes time. I gave a tour to a group of young families not too long ago, and it was a great conversation about schools in general. And one of the moms came up to me after the tour and she said, what do you do if both parents aren't on the same page? If both parents are seeing this very differently? And I said, well, you celebrate the breadth of opinion. I said, but don't make it a fight. Make it a partnership and a project. And so as you explore what those options are, don't try to make a decision prematurely. Work together and you'll sort of find that common ground as you can. The second piece of advice is, it's okay if your decision in school choice does not resemble your sister's, your neighbor's, or even what you thought you would initially do. And you know, my younger brother has 3 girls in Henrico County Public Schools, never once looked at an independent school, is happy as he can be. And you know, we're both settled in the choices that we made and feel like they complement each other. They don't compete with each other. The third piece of advice is, even if you had the best experience academically ever, don't try to put your academic experience onto your child, because education has changed, it's gotten better, and quite frankly, your experience may not even exist in today's world. And so you have to think freely for your child. You'll take all the good stuff that you got, you just don't have to weave it into the perfect reality. I'm married to the best man in the world, but he is a lawyer and he makes these lists of pros and cons, and if they're like 10 pros and 2 cons, that's how he makes his decision. And I drive him absolutely wild because I'm very instinctive. I would say you've got to gather the facts about schools, but you've got to let yourself have some instinct too. And that means you don't have to be able to explain everything. You do have to feel right about the choice. At the end of the day, don't give in to quick assumptions and quick words like, all independent school kids are, all public school kids are, SOLs are, tuition is. You know what? Those are all too easy. The outs are too easy, and you've got access to the information, so don't fall into that category. At the end of the day, you don't have a crystal ball. You got to make the best decision you know how to make for the short term, and you're not ever stuck. And that's where this program today absolutely empowers you to know that. Students who start in the independent school world will end up with Cheryl in the public school world. Students who start in the public school world may end up in the independent school world. We hold hands and work together for this community, and for all of us to be successful, there has to be that mutual respect and that mutual sort of conversation, which is exactly what today is about. The next step is sort of what you can do for your children as they are about to enter into a formal school setting, and I'm going to turn it over to the expert.
I don't know that I'm an expert. Thank you, Amanda. Well, first of all, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself, as Amanda did. Like her, although I've been an educator for a very long time, I think the thing that I value most in a lot of my decision making is being a mother of 2 children and a grandmother of 2 children. One who is in kindergarten this year, and my youngest is a senior at Virginia Tech, so it's been a long time since I've been visiting kindergarten that way, which was perfect. When the Children's Museum called and talked about it, I said, oh, I've got some fresh stuff now that I didn't have last year. And again, to segue with what Amanda has said, and when I think about the purposes of education, and we could talk about creating an informed citizenship, we could talk about workforce development, we could talk about creating critical thinkers, which is where you read that everywhere. But in the end, I think it's really bigger. It's in order for humanity to survive, we really have to be learners. So no matter what your view of all those list of purposes of education, in the end, our survival depends on it. And of course, I saw some infants out there. I saw children that will be getting ready for kindergarten. And with the hands raised, I know there are a lot of you that are right at the brink of what I would say being an educator, the best time of your life once they start school. And you get a chance to see the world through their eyes, which is the most powerful thing. But with that, I think the main thing still becomes learning for learning's sake. No matter the venue that you pick, if we believe that a survival as a species and a culture, that learning is important, then we celebrate the choices that we have, and we try to make the very best one that we can. I have said for learning's sake, and I think Amanda touched on this. And last time we were here, the pipeline, the oil pipeline had burst, and they were trying to solve that. And as I think about your children, what will our world look like when they are the ones that are in charge and they're making both political decisions, life decisions? And so the idea of being a continuous learner starts from the moment they're born all the way through to even old like me. Finding ways to research what's out there, to connect that, make meaning of it, to challenge and improve the thinking around whatever the old thought was. And when you put education in that context and you think about what you really want for your child, a lot of the things you're trying to do right now, from the moment you bring them home until they start school, will be some of the same life skills that they will end up using for the rest of their life. I want to take a quote, and I'm sure that you have heard of this gentleman, but I love to bring him up at an event like this. Robert Fulghum. All I really need to know about how to live and what to do and how to be, I learned in kindergarten. And that book, All I Ever Needed to Know, I learned in kindergarten. If you haven't gotten it out in a while, I would get it back out. I have a feeling it'll have as great an impact on you as it will be what you think about your child. But in his long list of things that he puts in there, today when I think about getting ready for kindergarten, and I would say getting ready for life, is the last, number 16 is my favorite, and probably some of it's because of my age. Remember the Dick and Jane books. Now I'm looking at some of you and I see you nodding, and some of you are thinking, who is Dick and Jane? Wasn't that a movie? Well, yes, it was a movie. But remember the Dick and Jane books, and the first word you learned, the biggest word of all, was look. I'm going to say that again. The biggest word of all was look. And I want to start with that because if you came today and were thinking, okay, she's going to tell me the perfect flashcards to use and what kind of workbook pages I should do, and can I send my child to this type of learning center, because when my child goes to kindergarten, I want my child to be just the best of the group. You probably won't get that from me today, because what I really believe is of huge value is that word look, observe, develop, play. In my mind, the very best thing is to create a risk taker, a child who asks a lot of questions. Now, how many of you have a 2-year-old right now? Okay, you're probably thinking, if I have to hear why one more time, why? And you think, I don't want my child asking any more questions. And if you are like me, there was a time, as much as I value questions, where I did say, because I say so. And that's just normal parenting. But with that said, if you have one thing you take away from today, at least of my portion, the one thing that I want you to take away that you can develop to help your child is to develop their curiosity. That's the number one thing. Develop their curiosity. There's not a silver bullet. There's not one this or that. Amanda touched on this too. Each child, each human in this room had their own learning journey. They had their own life journey. And those of you that have more than one children, and Amanda's very versed in this, you know that their needs are very different. And what they are curious about, and where are their strengths. You know, what's their first string thing that makes them who they are. So with that said, I want to just run through a quick little list and then we'll get to questions. But everything that I'm saying really comes around curiosity. And some of it will not be a surprise. And I know you know things like they need to learn their name and their address and phone number for safety. They need to be able to hold a pencil and color and draw and be nice and be kind. And we know that. But I want to think beyond the traditional thinking around kindergarten. Any school that you visit will be able to give you information around the academic requirements for kindergarten, what they're expected to do by the end of the year, and what they're expected to know, or they would like for them to know when they come. My comments are going to be more about the journey, the fun part of it. You know, how do they get to that point? And I heard somebody here was from the library, so they'll like my number one. Read aloud and read every day. Not just fiction, which might be your favorite, nonfiction. I've got a grandson that really doesn't want to hear anything, and so now we're having to try to explore fiction. But you give him something nonfiction, and he will go crazy with it. A lot of people don't think about poetry. Parents reading poetry. Magazines. You know, when you think about read aloud, we tend to narrow our view of what that means. It can be captioned on the television when they're watching certain things where they can read and hear what they're saying. Bookstores, technology. My own mother, 2 quick stories. When I had a working mother and she had 2 children and she was going to graduate school when we were little. And there wasn't always a lot of time by the time you prepared and took care of the home and the family. And I found out later when I was older and kind of like Amanda did, sought advice from my mother. And she said, well, you know, I read my textbooks that I had to read for my class. I put y'all in my lap and I read it, real sing-songy. And y'all just loved it. So I would call my mother just the most multitasker I know. But with that, even this Thanksgiving, my youngest cousin is 38. And at the end of the Thanksgiving meal, she has a 2-year-old. She always has a bunch of questions about how to help Hayes grow and be better and learn. And she said, Aunt Hilda, do you remember that book, The Giving Tree? Can you get that back out? And so here we are from age 2 to probably 72, and we're listening to The Giving Tree. So when I say read aloud and embrace books and print, I don't just mean, it can be just before you go to bed, but it can be any time, anything that you see. And libraries have a wealth of information and can often guide you to help you find things that are of great interest to your children. The next thing would be ask questions, such as, what do you think will happen next? How would you change that ending to make it better? What's your favorite part? Where do rainbows come from? What makes the sky look like that? Why is it that color? What would happen if? That's your favorite little question still right there. What would happen if? You can use it in terms of helping them understand behavior, or you can use it with science experiments and while I'm on the science experiments, when I think about curiosity, there are some very simple experiments that you can just do at home. You don't need all the goggles and the coat, although that might make a wonderful holiday gift. It is the idea of having your children predict things that they think might happen and then explore what's appropriate at their level. There was a little 2-year-old waiting to get on the train out there, and she had a watch, and she knew what time it was. So no matter how young you think your children are, and they can't, they have unfiltered ideas that I think help us not lose our sense of wonder and question. Environmental print, saw a lot of that out there, cereal signs, restaurants. Word work, one story, I love stories. When I was observing a teacher in a challenge school, where the students come with varied experiences, she was a first-year teacher, I'll never forget it. I went into her room and I thought, oh my, her vocabulary is so above what these students are going to be able to understand. And then I went back 8 weeks later, and I was embarrassed at my thinking. And I will tell you, it changed my views when I later became a principal. That one experience clearly stuck with me because I'm still talking about it. But when I went back to that room 8 weeks later, oh no, everyone in that class was talking the way the teacher had. She developed and scaffolded their understanding to her level. She did not come down to a level of their experience, and my thinking was very flawed. So when I talk about word work and vocabulary and saying not real or artificial, they mean the same thing. But really just driving down the road, thinking of things that you see, all of that word work is hugely important. Sorting anything you can find. You don't need to buy things. You can go out in the woods and find things. Sorting shapes and colors, because that will allow children to observe, back to that big word look, what is alike? What's different? How are they alike? What do they have in common? No matter what kind of job they have down the road, it's going to be important for them to see things that are alike, things that are different. How can I make meaning of those things? Can't leave math out. You can see I'm kind of going through my content areas because I don't want to hurt any of my content friends' feelings. Of course, coins and skip counting and patterns. I know coins for my own son was difficult until I started saying when you can name them, you can have them. It's amazing how his piggy bank filled up and how quickly he became very interested in how many coins it would take to earn something that he wanted. Maps and globes. Okay, there is so much you can do with maps in terms of young children understanding where they are in their home, their neighborhood, their community. A lot of students see a flat map and they really believe the world is flat. And then when they have their first experience with a globe, they're like, whoa, these things are a lot closer than I thought. I thought they were 3 feet apart, because they didn't realize the connection. Or the little second grader who realized, hey, we're just a globe that's floating. What keeps us up there? Are we going to fall? When I throw a ball, it falls on the ground. What makes that happen? That makes me afraid. So again, curiosity, I believe in starting to explore whatever is developmentally appropriate for that age, and really piquing their interest so that there is a desire to learn about letters and sounds and numbers and time. And And I would be remiss without talking about music and just the joy that it brings to your life, but in patterning, in rhythm and rhyme, and of course art. How do you express yourself with dimension and color and shape? And technology. I was last year at a retirement event, and there was a little girl, a little less than 2, and it was a retirement event, so we were all old, not that interesting to her. And she had her iPad that she was working on. So, being an educator, I walk over and look to see what she's doing. It held her attention. She manipulated, she moved, she knew exactly what she was doing. And when I went back to work, I said, let me tell you, in 3 years, when that little girl gets to our school, and I said to her, grandmother, where will she be going to elementary school? Because we need, as educators at both places, to prepare for the generation that is about to dawn our doors, for the very reason that I talked about in the beginning, which is developing curiosity so that they continue to explore and challenge us and push us and take us to a better place. And I have to tell you, as an educator, I feel as hopeful as I have ever felt continuing to work with young people. And the fact that you all are here today is one of the last things that I'm going to say before I read my final quote. Being a lifelong learner yourself, having your child see, how do I go about problem solving with that? Where would I go to get information? What do I do when I get frustrated? How do I work with others? Do I call my sister over or my neighbor? How do we problem solve together? The fact that you're here shows that you're modeling for your children about being a lifelong learner. And what Amanda said, knowledge is power in every aspect, not just selecting educational choices, but it is the power that allows you to be successful in anything that you do. And I'm going to end with my last and favorite quote, and it probably won't surprise you when you hear it, because I've talked a lot about questioning. Quality questions create a quality life. Successful people ask better questions, and as a result, they get better answers. And that's Anthony Robbins, and I do believe that curiosity and asking questions, creating risk takers, really looking at what your child is doing and really encouraging them to look and observe and take in and find connections at the very most elementary level. They will be able to take those skills all the way through. They are collaboration, communication, problem solving, critical thinking, 21st century skills. And it starts before they ever get to school, because you are the first teacher, you're the parent. And like Amanda, I agree that parents can be very insightful in helping schools, no matter where your children go, to align the experience for them that pushes and challenges them, but also recognizing, as we said earlier, that every child has his or her own journey. And I think basking in that journey rather than fighting it, but really enjoying that journey, though sometimes difficult. I was a principal, I will tell you, sometimes difficult. Really, when you embrace that journey, not only will your child grow, but you will grow as a contributing member of the group. So I thank you for your time and attention. I hope you got a few tidbits to take with you.
Great, thank you, ladies. So we'll move into some questions, but I was writing some notes as we were listening, and I was thinking, from the parenting perspective, I'm a mom as well. My children are 21, 18, and 7. And, I kept thinking about when I made my decisions about my children's schools, because I've done both too. I've done independent schools and I've done public schools. I have all girls, but they're completely different. And what they needed was different within their personalities and also within their years. Again, I did the same thing. I've been in the public school and the independent schools for different various needs. My youngest is in 2nd grade now, and she's in public school, and quite honestly, I'm listening like you all do, because it is hard. But what I want to let you know is, I'm going to stand up. That's how I talk best. Oh, uh-oh. This is getting too loud. I think, the one thing that I can caution you about and let you know it's okay about is when you've made that decision, there's going to be times when you're going to go, ugh, I hope that was the right decision. We do that anyway now, right? As parents, we're always constantly like, how do I do this? How do I do this the best for my child? But there will be moments, wouldn't you agree, whatever decision you make, when you think, gosh, well, maybe I should have chosen an independent school and we wouldn't have the bus ride or the loud bus, or maybe I should have chosen a public school and we'd have more diversity or a different type of feel to the day. There always are going to be times when you think, oh, maybe I should have done it. Here's the answer to that. Talk to your child's teacher. That is going to be your partner within the school and to know what's going on with your child. Because I think a lot of times parents are worried about going to the teacher. They're worried they're going to cause trouble or they're going to start something. But I've found in my experience when I've had questions, is this the right fit for my daughter? Talking to the teacher is a great way to go in and say, well, yeah, she's doing fine, don't worry. Or, maybe she needs a little more help on this, maybe something's going on that you can help her with outside the school as well. So that's my little tidbit about the school decision making. I think we've heard a lot of good information. The other one thing I wanted to talk about too, as you talked about developing their curiosity and their life skills, I have to give my plug for not giving your children the answers all the time. We all know about helicopter parenting, and we try not to do it, but it's easy to fall into that trap. And I think sometimes when our kids have questions, and like you both were talking about, we have to let them find the answers and show them how to problem solve and model that for them as well. And thanks for giving the museum plugs as well. We do that here. We have so many ways for them to learn in the museum. But I also wanted to reference a kindergarten readiness app that we developed that will give, it's on the iPhone and it's out on our Commonwealth Parenting kiosk as well today. But you can download it. It's a quick 24-question app that asks questions about waiting, taking turns, as well as the academics, but also buttoning up their coat. Do they know how to bounce a ball? And you answer always, sometimes, or not yet. For those that you answered sometimes or not yet, it gives you ideas and things you can do at home or in the museum to help them get ready. So that's a good resource for you as well. Okay, questions? See some hands. I'll try to repeat it if you can't hear it, but go ahead.
I have a question for all of you ladies about supplemental programs in terms of readiness. I'm asking, I grew up in Japan and was an educator in Japan, and I see America's taking some of the traditions on that were negative, in my view, starting with special courses like Kumon or overscheduling very young children. I'm wondering if you can speak to that, and is it, should I say overscheduling is a good thing, is a bad thing, what are some pros and cons?
We can both probably speak to this. I agree with you. I think that one of the most important parts of childhood is play, is being out in the backyard, not being overscheduled, not being exhausted all the time, and I think that requires a parental discipline in today's world because you are so tempted to think, if I don't do this, this, and this, then for whatever reason my child is not going to be successful. Don't buy it. I think, and Cheryl can speak to this as well, the most important thing with a pre-kindergarten child is to make sure they have exposure outside of your world. Whether that's a preschool, whether that's the children's museum, independence is important because you can't go to kindergarten with them. You may not go and spend the entire day in the classroom. And to the degree that you can help children feel comfortable with that, I think it's key. I also think children have to learn that you can't win all the time and you're not always right. And being part of a classroom in kindergarten, to me, is being part of something bigger than yourself and being able to give and take and being able to share. And those are the skills, frankly, from my viewpoint, that are more sustainable over time than what are the facts that you know. But Sean.
I would just agree that I think the difference between when I was growing up, and we had a few choices: ballet, piano, that was it, maybe a sport, softball. But there is so much, not only for children to do, but for adults to do, that we have to start making some choices around that. I really wholeheartedly agree with what Amanda has said, and I think your children give you signs of that too. And that's purely not being an educator, this is just mom talking, that they let you know when they need time to just be, to explore the backyard, to use rudimentary tools to make things. And Amanda started with this in hers, and I do think, I know I felt it as a parent, a lot of pressure for what is your child doing? Is he walking yet? Did she do this yet? And I was constantly like, oh, I don't know, maybe, I got that book, the first how many years, and I marked that, and I did all that, and I think that as parents, we just want to be sure things are moving along, but it really, really is, I think, about balance, as Amanda said, and you said it better than I did, but about exploring things beyond your world and what you like. You know what I mean? Like really reaching out, and in that journey, as I said, you will likely find something yourself, but you need time to just be. They will be in school from either age 5 or 6 for a very, very long time. And so I think providing structure, but a lot of variety in that, sport, art, and sometimes, we had our son made a choice, am I going to do golf and this and this and this, or am I going to focus because we can't be everywhere all at the same time? And that was a later in life, later issue, but those choices had to be made starting a little bit earlier. And I think it prepared him to be able to make that choice more intuitively when he was older.
I would echo that, and then also say, find parents that have older kids and ask them, was this helpful? Did you think that, going to these math drill classes or tutoring was a benefit? I mean, I think you might find some research with other parents might be helpful in those decisions. Mm-hmm. Yes?
Can you speak to when, I have a 4-year-old boy, and I have a 17-year-old son and a 1-year-old. But my 4-year-old will be 5 in March, so he could go next year. But this child, academically, though I think he's ready, he is wide open. And he never stops, he just go. He's very wiggly. I know, I'm getting good feedback from his preschool, but at the same time, my 17-year-old went and he struggled in kindergarten, but he pulled it together. But then in middle school, it caught up, and he had a maturity issue, and middle school was rough, and high school's been much better for him. But when is the right time, to send them as far as their physical activity and their ability to sit and focus? And my 4-year-old's a precious child, but he's got a lot of energy.
So how do you know when they're ready?
I think some children need to go to school when their birthday says they're 5, and what's the cutoff? September 30th by the kindergarten year. Some children need to start. Some children need to wait. And I think you need to gather feedback from preschool teachers. I think you need to follow your own instincts. I think the March birthday, you want to just be very clear with both the public school system and the independent school system that waiting with a March birthday is okay. Sometimes spring children do need that extra year. Sometimes the latitude is more for summer, June, July, August, September. Just don't cut off options that you might then not be able to move forward. But I will tell you, I waited with my daughter a year to let her be 6 before she started. It was the best decision ever, but I will tell you that had my son had a summer birthday, I would have sent him on. So I don't have an opinion of right and wrong. I think you do want them to have the poise to pull it off in the way that you want and not limp through. And that was the feedback I got from my daughter's preschool teacher. She said, Amanda, technically she could go. She could do the work. But does she have the maturity to be able to lead and truly have that sense of self? She said, I don't think she has it now. I think time will tell.
are there behavioral benchmarks that you want to look for that says, okay, they're ready? You know what I mean? Like, are there?
I'm going to let Cheryl speak to her perspective. At the independent school level, there is frequently a readiness test that goes along with the kindergarten process that gives you some of that behavioral feedback. And that is a great tool, even if you're looking at your public school and have no sense of going into an independent school. You can go through that process and get that readiness feedback, which can be helpful regardless of where you begin.
Yes, most of I can't speak to all the elementary schools in the region, but many of them do have kindergarten readiness tests at the student assessment, not really a test. Some are not as focused on behavior, although behavior will be noted during the process and discussed with the parent in most places. You know, I liked how you worded it about your son, that, you know, he was precious and just maybe not ready at this time. And I really agree with Amanda. You know, it's September 30th, and my situation's a little bit different. My son was July 30th. He was due in September, but born in July. My daughter was October 7th, so she missed the cutoff. And so I was like, my husband said, you're the only person I know who's pregnant and is worried about when school starts. But it's just nature of what we do. And like her, it was awesome that Amanda was a little bit older to be going. And Trent, on the other hand, he was ready to be. He was really ready to be. I would have hated to have imagined that senior year if it had been 1 year later. You know, he was really ready to get out into the big world. I think that, just as Amanda said, I would take this is really early in the year, just like you said, in spring they can really change, and so how your son will look in March of next year is very different than how he's going to look now. And so you've got some time to make that decision, and I would do as Amanda said, just continue to gather anecdotal information with his preschool's teacher, what you're seeing. I hesitate to give you a behavior because when students come to our school, behavior is something that's part of the learning process. It's part of helping them understand the procedures and routines. And I encourage you to talk about procedures and routines in your own home. You know, what's our process for when we get up in the morning? How do we put our things up? Because they're the same kind of routines that will help them when you're not with them in college and when they go to kindergarten. You know, where do I put my things? So you can start to develop some of those, but we work with children that are age 5, and again, I would just hesitate to say they have to have this behavior, because I believe that part of what we do is to work with children as they come, both academic and behaviorally, and we partner with the parents to try to accelerate growth where it's needed. So I don't have a black and white, you know, I agree with Amanda. I think I would just continue to gather information. And this is the other thing too. It's like any decision. You do the very best you can with the information you have available to you at that time. Then you make the decision, you put it to bed. Then you have new information, and then you can reevaluate it. You can look at it. Is this working? Is it not working? So from a parent standpoint, don't put too much pressure on yourself. You know, use the best that you know and what you know about your child, and then you go with it. And then you keep reevaluating it, and I will tell you, as Amanda has said too, you will continue to be reevaluating it until they're married and gone. You know, should I say this? Should I not say that? You know, so that process is not going to go away when they start school. If anything, get comfortable with it, because it's going to be around with you for a very long time. That doing the best I know with what I have available to me at this moment, given our family, our values, and what I know about you. Notice I said our family, because, you know, that won't take long to get in there either. Yeah.
I know the answer is going to be it's a very family decision, personal for everyone, but the independent versus public, I can't ignore the cost. And so while I'd like to make a decision for my family that's not based on finances at all, I can tell a big difference in my son when I'm around more, and I'm very lucky I was able to take retirement for a few years after being the breadwinner. I could work and pay for any school, or not work and be there for my son more. That's just I'd love to hear
So the question is, could you all hear that in the back? Okay, good. I'll let you.
I'll just start with saying, and Amanda said this in her intro, we are so lucky to live where we live that really you have awesome schools, whether you choose private, parochial, independent, you're in an awesome spot. And I think Amanda said about visiting the schools where you live or where you plan to live if you're thinking about moving. Get in there, meet people. We're very accustomed to having parents come into the school and say, hey, can I set up a time? I want to walk around. I want to know what you're about. See how it feels, how it looks to you. And schools should welcome any feedback that you have. That's something that we should embrace. We can't want to give it and not receive it. So I would encourage you to visit. Now, in terms of, Amanda will speak to some of the independent and the cost and that kind of component. But in the end, as I said, I think that once you get all of your information and weigh and measure, to take her husband's line, the pros and the cons, and she's going to talk to you about the intuitive part, then in the end, you've got to just go with it.
You've asked a terrific question, and the piece I will say is your family balance is more important than anything else, because if life at home ain't great, then I don't care where you send your child to school, life at school is going to be off. I will also offer that independent schools in general certainly have tuition associated, but there is always some sort of need-based financial aid, scholarship possibility, so don't discount sort of the tuition charging option without exploring what that access could look like. I also think that the decision at home needs to be thoughtful, and sometimes families will say, I'm going to give it a shot, and then if it doesn't work, sort of make that alternative decision. And independent schools are different. There may be more space at the lower levels, less space as you get older, and you don't want to live in fear of an admission process, but you need to just be mindful of the fact that the opportunity is probably larger at the lower levels. It depends on the school, and you just don't want to box yourself out. But at the end of the day, if mom is happy, everybody's happy.
Questions from the back? Or?
I have a two-part question. One is, my son is 4 years old, turns 5 next year. He goes to a preschool right now. What I keep hearing at preschool is, some schools have an interview process for children. I'm not sure about what interview process it is and how we should have them prepared for it. That's one question. The other one is 5 to 9. I keep hearing about 5 to 9. When is the best time to actually put money at 5 to 9, and is it worthwhile?
Well, 529, I can only say I did it when my child was really little, and it's been awesome because he's graduating, because there's still expenses outside of that. But in terms of really talking about 529, I would say that would be out of my area of expertise, other than what I did as a parent. What I would do is contact the school where your child will be attending, whatever that school is. Tell them you have questions about the kindergarten process. Jackie is here and she can correct me, but I think the kindergarten registration date will be April 14th? 16th? April 16th. 16th. I was close. I knew she would correct me. And so that will be the time in which we'll do the beginning registration in public school. And so everybody in the region, that's the kickoff. That's not the only day you can do it, but it's a day that we're set up for you to do it. And so sometime between now and then, you may want to contact the school and just say, what is your process? What does that look like? Gather information and visit the school, because they will be able to tell you what the process is. It's not a secret at all. They will be glad to tell you what it is. And I would just give them a call and go visit and see what it looks like. Also, no matter, in any venue, I think it's good for you to be able to answer your child's questions. I mean, you just see a student, a kindergartner who had an older sibling, they walk up in that building, they own that place. They're not a bit of anything, but for children, it's their first experience in any school, and they didn't have an older sibling. It kind of helps you be able to answer some questions about things they'll see, what to be prepared for. So attending fall events at any of the schools, participating, before you're required to do it, is a great way to meet people and hear about the school and what makes it special and unique and part of your community or a larger community.
I think that readiness is individually based on the child's sort of place and time. One of the things that anyone can access is sort of the kindergarten readiness process at an independent school, whether you are planning to send your child or not, but it can give you a terrific roadmap. I can't speak for every independent school in our area, but I can say that for many, there are two pieces of an assessment. One is a one-on-one with the psychologist, which really measures, are you developing in an age-appropriate way across a series of cognitive activities. The children really enjoy it because they get undivided attention by someone who's just telling them that, we want to hear from you. The second piece is that readiness piece, which if you have a child with a birthday that's cuspy, focuses more on those classroom behaviors. And you don't have to enroll in an independent school to get feedback from that process. You can take that feedback and have just a sense of where your child is as you begin any school. And I certainly see many times families who come into our kindergarten process because they want to have that roadmap, not necessarily because they intend to come, and that is our pleasure. Our goal is to have families have enough information to make the choice that's right.
I would add to as I mentioned, I have a 21-year-old, and when we were living in Nashville at the time, we were looking at a lot of these decisions, and the interview process, I'm sure, is very similar, across different cities, but it was different at different schools too. With my mom groups, my coffee groups, my book group, what is going to be on the test? Do they need to know their address, how to count to 10? Some of those things on the kindergarten readiness assessments are there.
You do not need to prepare your child for kindergarten. Do not. A good night's sleep and a good breakfast is about all I would recommend.
Yes.
And I'm not kidding. And this gets to the point, I think the lady who asked the question, you don't want to prep for this.
No.
You want them to come into that experience with the maturity and skill set that exists so that they can be successful. Because if you prop somebody up artificially on the front end, you don't get the long-term groove that follows.
Right.
And I think that's where, as parents, that gratification of somebody jumping out of that car every day and saying, see ya, I'm going to school, I can't wait, that's really what you're looking for.
Well, I think too, the children will pick up on your stress. If you're stressed out about this interview process, they will pick up on it. So the more you can treat it as, hey, we're going to visit this school to see if it's a good fit for us. I mean, the interview process goes two ways. You want to make sure that that school is a good fit for you and your family and your child as well. So I encourage you to flip it around and look at that as well. Not that your child is going to be judged or your parenting is going to be judged, but is it the right fit for your child? Both in Nashville and in Richmond, we interviewed at different schools and tested at different schools and chose based on what was right for our girls. It had to be, as you mentioned, right for us and our family as well as for the children. It can be a stressful process. For many of us it is. It was for me too, and it was for my children. But the more we could treat it as, we're just going to go meet Miss Amanda, or we're going to meet Miss Cheryl, or we're going to meet Miss Susie, or Mr. John, or whatever, and keep it little casual. We're going to go talk to them and play with them. That's how we treated it. Instead of, you're going to take a test. That was not the right way to do it. What other questions do you have? Yes?
Could you all speak to the appropriateness of technology for a preschooler, preparing for kindergarten, and what to expect in the kindergarten classroom as it relates to technology? And just curious, because we don't do anything. We don't have, let our 4-year-old use the iPad, or we try to kind of not go there, but then I hear things about, elementary schools with iPads, and just curious to know what to expect.
So should we prepare them with technology at home?
Well, what I will say, and I don't know what every division has, but I know in Henrico, where you all are now, that there are iPads in both the preschool that is there, and then K and 1. And then, so that would be in all of the entire county. I'm not aware, I'm sure Chesterfield, Powhatan, where I am, there's technology, computers, different tools in the classroom. And I think that would be true almost anywhere in the region, that there is going to be technology in the kindergarten classroom. In terms of prepping them for that, again, I think it really is sort of a family decision. What I will say is that kind of what Amanda said, I think they're going to naturally have whatever they need to be trained on when they come in. There's certain skills that you want them to have. So I would just, whatever came naturally. If you go to a lot of the museums, there's technology there, touch screens, things that they can move and manipulate. So your children are probably having more access than you're maybe traditionally thinking. And so it isn't something I would, I think it's a personal family decision is what I would say. But I definitely know when they get to kindergarten in most places in this region and probably across the state, they're going to have exposure to technology.
I don't think there's any expectation in independent schools that you come to kindergarten with technology knowledge. I will actually say that we have seen a decline in children's fine motor skills, the ability to hold a pencil and do things, because keyboards and games do not create any sort of hand strength. And I would offer finding that right balance between exposure to technology and, making them wring the washcloth out in the bathtub at night, hanging from the monkey bars and timing it. So I think there can be an academic detriment to too much technology if you're doing a journal in kindergarten and you've got 6 people around the table and you don't have the hand strength to make your journal pretty, you're not going to want to pick up that pencil and do it. So I think that just striking the right balance. I agree with you. I chose a preschool that didn't have technology in it, and that was back in the dark ages, because I just wanted them to play, and I knew probably once you touched it and loved it, that would be what you wanted to do, but they will over time need that skill, but not in 4.
My daughter's in preschool, and I've been hearing from a lot of the moms and dads of their kids that are planning to go to either an independent school or a public school, that those schools are providing a preschool program now. So they're trying to decide if next year, instead of doing junior K, they put them directly into the preschool program in the school that they're going into. Some of them are thinking about doing it. Some of them want to keep them with their friends and keep them in the preschool. And I do not think that my preschool location has, my elementary school has a preschool. But I'm wondering if I wish I did, if it did. So I'm just curious, how do you assess that? What is this new thing about having preschools become part of, kindergarten? And are we going in that direction where kids are going to start preschool instead of kindergarten?
Preschools, well, first of all, it was the former governor's initiative was a lot around preschool, so that's probably where you heard a lot about that. Many divisions tried to expand some of their preschools. Most of the ones that I'm familiar with for preschool would be age 4, and they would be needs-based, either because they have gaps in their academics at that time, or there would be financial need. That's a kind of a short version of it. And so there are not preschools in every school, usually. And if there are, there's an interview process, and you, just as you can with independent schools, you can always participate in applying for the preschool, and then they will assess whether or not your child is eligible to come. The preschool, I'm looking at Jackie again, I think it begins the same day as the kindergarten. But I'm not 100% sure that that's true in each division. But if you contact your local school, they will either put you in touch with the preschool department that can answer any questions you have around preschool related to where you live or what are the criteria for the specific types, because there are different types of preschool programs too, depending on the division where you live.
And that's the same thing in the independent schools, that the preschool is used for identifying
identifying gaps?
No, I can't speak for every independent school, but I can tell you, in the independent school world in the greater Richmond area, some schools have a transitional kindergarten, which is sort of that summer birthday. Some programs have a 4-year-old program, but I would absolutely say it is not something you have to do. You know, if you feel like where you are and that next step prior to kindergarten is a good fit and meaningful, and your child is getting what he or she needs, there's no need to sort of jump in. If you're feeling like, that next step may not be as rich as I'd like it to be in terms of curriculum, then you can take a look at sort of that pre-K, JK option. And not every independent school has one. Some are just traditional K through 8. I know the parochial schools are K through 8. I know that some independent schools have that extra step, but that does, if it's a good fit for that JK or pre-K program, then you don't have an admission process to worry about, but that entry point in K is not diminished by that.
Okay.
Yes, I have a 4.5-year-old. He does 5 mornings a week and then 2 days extended to 2 extra hours. And I can definitely tell that he's exhausted. And I'm concerned about, I know that there's standard for public school hours. Are there standards for independent school hours as well?
Many of the kindergarten programs are full day. Carrie and Jennifer, are y'all back there? Are y'all's full day? Yes. You identify an important issue, and this goes back to the lady who mentioned over-programming. At the end of the kindergarten day at 3 o'clock, they're worn out. They need to get in the car, they need to go home and have a snack, and they just need to be. And so what you're seeing is appropriate, is absolutely, the right way, and is it a boy? As he gets older, his stamina is going to get better, but I think that the full-day kindergarten is probably the most typical. It is in the public school system too.
Yes.
Yes.
Most. I'm not sure about the whole state, but I think most people are now full day.
And I can't speak for every independent school, but that is the trend that we've seen.
Some cities are half, like Chesapeake, Virginia's half.
Yeah, there were a few. There used to be more, Henrico used to be half day. But I think there may be just a few, like you said. I think most are full day now.
Yes, back in the back.
I'm the mother of twins, one boy, one girl. And the girl is like bouncing too many questions on me, and the boy is not at all worried about anything. So they are 4.5 and they'll be going to kindergarten. Will they have the same class? Because their abilities are so different.
I want to say this. Well, first of all, when you register them for kindergarten, that might be a nice time to kind of segue to that. I will tell you, as this is just a principal talking. And one year I had 8 sets of twins and a set of triplets. I couldn't believe it. I mean, really, it was just something in the water. I really encourage parents to have them be in different classes to develop their own independence and work and study habits and that kind of thing. However, there are times when you determine that having them together is a better decision. I know it sounds like I'm Miss Wishy-Washy from the book. Not really, because I think nothing is ever going to be just perfect in black and white. But I will say, starting out and developing their own friend groups and independence, teachers will often plan together at a grade level, so there should be commonality in the work that is appropriate to where they are. So there will be some differences. Even if they were in the same class, there would likely be some differences. But I really encourage parents to have them start out in separate classes, because there's a point when they won't be able to be together. And the sooner they sort of come into their own independence, I just found that it tended to work better. But I never say never, because there might be something I don't know.
My girl actually, she gives me a lot of questions. Like when I was taking the gas in the car, where did the gas go last week that you took? And then she came to me and then said, I have a question, can we turn the ocean waves direction? Like, is it like, curious. I see like a lot of intelligent questions from her, and I don't know that whether should I use that potential that is God given in her, like maybe direct her towards some special, I don't know, like, or leave her on her own?
Your son who doesn't ask the questions may have that same gift, he just may keep it inside. I think when they're very little, it's very difficult to know exactly, you know you have potential. You just don't know how and when it's going to be unlocked. And I would certainly continue to stimulate that curiosity and I couldn't answer her questions, so I would not know how to, about the waves and maybe not even the gas. But I would let her continue to bloom. I think once she goes to school, you're going to see her hit her stride, and you're going to watch him hit his stride too. And then with more school experience, you'll know. My experience with twins is sometimes it's better to have them be separated and find their space, but I think most schools are going to try to work with you in terms of what your parental desire would be, and there's going to be some balance. But I think sometimes quieter twins find their voice when their sibling who does all the doing and talking isn't right there.
The boy just follows.
She just talks for him. That's it.
Okay, yes.
I'm a former first grade teacher in Chesterfield, and I was always thrilled when students would come to me and they knew their letters already, they knew their letter sounds, and they could write their letters and had all of those skills. I've been out of the classroom a while, but what I'm hearing is that first or kindergarten is what first grade used to be. Would you say there's any truth to that? And if so, should we be nervous about that?
Well, I do agree that, like I said earlier, knowing their name, how to hold a pencil, being familiar with letters and sounds. I mean, it is great if they come knowing all that. I mean, it is. They'll take a PALS assessment that is given in the state of Virginia, and they'll measure those exact skills. But there'll be some students who won't have all their letters and sounds, and that is really okay. I mean, it is okay to come as you are, and then we differentiate the program for you to meet your needs. A little to Amanda has said, the way students attach to abstract concepts like that, they hit their sweet spot in a very different, it's not always at the same time. Okay, you turn 5 and now you can do this. Or they walk at different times, how they take those abstract symbols and realize that they're sounds and they go together, and so I don't know that I necessarily agree that they didn't have kindergarten when I went to school, by the way. But so whether first grade is the new kindergarten, I don't know that. You'd have to know the time span. I mean, whether kindergarten's a new first grade, I'd have to know the generational timeline that you're talking about. But I will say that there is rigor in kindergarten where a lot of times they had, at least in public school, they had the play, and they still have those play areas because we recognize the importance of the art and the play and the development and the listening stations and all of that. But again, I think if you talk with your particular school where you'll be going, you can access, every school will have what their standards are for that for the kindergarten level, and you'll see exactly what they're expected to do by the end of the year. Most counties reflect what is on the Virginia Department of Education website for standards. So if you don't feel comfortable going to the school, you can go right to that website, download exactly what it looks like, and you can see what the expectations are by the end of kindergarten. And that gives you some sense of where they should be when they come in. But yes, if a student comes in and they know all their letters and sounds and colors and shapes, and they can count to 10 and count by twos and all of that. So the real message is, from wherever your child is today until that time, just exploring and working with them to let them go to the level that's appropriate for where they are in time. And I can assure you, you're not likely to rush it. If they're not ready for it, it's kind of like potty training. If you try to make them when they are not ready, you will get very frustrated because they're just not ready. And it doesn't mean anything's wrong with your child, that your child's not healthy and beautiful and happy. They just got their own timeline going on. Now, do we need to be mindful of it? Yes. I mean, we want to catch things as soon as we can. And your pediatrician can work with you on that, as long as some of the documents that Amanda's already mentioned about, where should my child be by age 3, by age 4. My own grandson had severe speech articulation problems, and they lived in Texas, and so I just didn't hear him on the phone. On the phone it sounded like gobbledygook anyway. But when we got out there, I downloaded right off the internet what letter sound should you be able to say by age 2, and he was age 2, and then we started our process to get him speech, because he was not what you should have mastered by that time. And so when I say that, yes, everybody reaches their own time, but I do think we want to use everything available to us to be sure that it is proceeding within a norm, within a range of what we would consider norm, so that if we need to interject any resources, we are ready to do that. And I use the example of my grandson, because now no speech anymore, because it was addressed, I think, at an early time. So I give that as kind of an example.
I think too, there's, as you mentioned, there's so many resources in the community. Never be afraid to ask for extra help. Your pediatrician is always a good place to go. At Commonwealth Parenting, we have a free helpline. You can call and ask questions of our educators and talk with them on the phone. We have one-on-one consultations if you want a little more information. We even have child observations, where we'll go into the preschool, take a look at the child, talk with the teacher, and help you decide if your child is ready for kindergarten as well. So there's always different areas to ask for more help and get resources.
And the thing that I'll offer, and you're a first grade teacher, you know this, every child is going to read at a different point in time, and that's one of those thresholds that parents look for very carefully. Oh my gosh, if my child's not reading by middle of the kindergarten year, what's wrong? Chances are nothing's wrong. So you've got to be patient and let them reach that milestone in their own time and in their own way, and differentiating in the classroom, both in the independent school world and in the public school world, is what happens. You can have two cognitively capable children who are equally talented, and one might know their letters and the other might not. So you do want to equip them, and the preschool world and the museum world has really heightened that readiness in terms of literacy, I think, and that's why I see the shift in perhaps children coming into kindergarten with a different kind of skill set, because they've been exposed earlier on.
I would agree. I mean, just to give you a personal, my oldest child did not read till 2nd grade. And she is now a beautiful reader and writer, but she wasn't ready. And that's, as I've found, she doesn't do anything until she's ready. But she was not ready. We drilled, we had extra help, we did all these things. She's not reading, she's not writing. 2nd grade it clicked. I was very worried about it as a teacher, but it clicked, and then she took off. Started reading chapter books, and now she's, she writes beautifully and still reads. So, yes.
It hit me when you said something about them holding a pencil. What do you do when they're 4.5 and there's no clear delineation as to which hand they are dominant with? Like, he uses both hands all the time. So, and I know he doesn't, I've sat down with him before and tried to have him hold the pencil properly, because I'm a former elementary school teacher too. But should I push him to use the right hand versus left, or just do both? Do I do grips for both and just see? I mean, that's something I hadn't even thought about till today.
Anybody want to take that?
Mixed dominance
Yeah.
sometimes can be a function of developmental readiness. I think that handedness comes along when you're ready to figure that out. Some children, though, are able on both hands for a lot of sports on one, pencil on the other, eating on the other. I wouldn't force anybody. I would maybe put a fork in the middle of the table and say pick it up and see what hand is that.
It depends. It's 50-50. Sometimes he goes to the left, sometimes he goes to the right.
Yeah.
That's what, because with my oldest, it was very clear. It was like, oh yeah, you're a right-hander. I'm left-handed, my husband's right-handed. So I know that he's got the genes on both sides. So, but it is about 50-50 time. I mean, we haven't been able to tell at all, because there's times he throws at both hands. Yeah, you just never know.
You might be able to tell somewhat by the product that is produced, whatever he's trying to do, if it's draw a shape or a tree or whatever.
Like one hand's more proficient than the other?
Well, yes, just from a proficiency standpoint, but that's really not my, I guess would say my area, but I would have said exactly what Amanda said. And, just to see, because one will likely rise up as the one that's more proficient, yeah.
A couple more questions. I see two in the back, so you two will have to be our last ones. Back here.
What do you do with a child who does come in, who knows the letters, knows the numbers? What do you do to keep them challenged and engaged?
Okay.
I'll start and I'll let Amanda go. One of the things with the assessments that we do at the very beginning of the school year and then prior to arriving to kindergarten, and then there are PALS assessments that we've talked about, and many divisions also do an assessment with mathematics. And once you determine where the students, and usually there are more than one student that work together, then you begin to differentiate their program based on what their needs are. For example, in reading, you often will have, kindergarten is a little bit different, but the idea of common experiences that you want everyone to have, and then you will differentiate in smaller groups in order to meet their needs. Because I think Amanda said, and my first grade teacher friend here, you will have students that are coming in, some that are just beginning to even think about a letter or sound, all the way up to some students who are reading. And so the teacher then wants to take that child, that student, where he or she is, and show growth. And almost everyone will be able to articulate to the parent, your child started here, and now your child is here. And that will come in the form of parent conferences, their report cards. Depending on what type of assessments they use, it's often a lettering system or different way that they can communicate to you that your child is still growing. It's not to any school's advantage for a child to come in already knowing stuff and we just keep telling them. It really, we want to pick them up from where they are and then move them forward. And there are many systems in place to help us track that. And then the other side is track it and then communicate it so that the parent is a partner with the educator to be sure that we're going in the right direction.
Also remember that the academic ability that some children come into a classroom with isn't sort of the whole picture. Sometimes a child can have all of those skills, but the social and emotional piece may not be exactly. So the lessons in kindergarten are certainly academic ones and you want that growth, but you also want there to be sort of attention to those other areas. And I'm as guilty as they come. One of my children was a really fluent reader prior to kindergarten, and of course I thought that was the end-all be-all, but socially and emotionally, he may have actually just been right there in the middle where everybody else was, and he didn't really need for the whole part of the day to be focusing on those academic things. He needed to get his interpersonal side, balanced out too. But the differentiation, and children will have good mental mates in that kindergarten classroom, whether it's an independent school or a public school, because a lot of them come in with just sort of the speed and the energy around a certain literacy area, and we all want to embrace that.
We'll take one more question, but I will let you know afterwards you'll be receiving a survey by email, and if you have additional questions, you can send them to us, and we'll filter them to you guys too as well. Okay, last question in the back.
Yes, here. So I've got two questions. So I have a child who's 5-year-old who's shy, also bilingual. So I don't want her to give up the ability of speaking her mother tongue in the process of learning the language of English. So, and I'm in the process of trying to figure out what would be the best for her to learn English in preparation for kindergarten, trying to learn and read, because her ability to speak English is a little less developed than her first language. So my question is, are there any tools or anything that you recommend for someone who is learning two different languages at the same time to prep for kindergarten? And the second thing is, because of her personality, she's very shy. So should I consider independent school, or should that not be a factor at all? I'm not too sure what will be the deciding factor of choosing between the public school and independent.
Good question about personality.
Well, I'll just speak to locally. There's if you have questions around English as a second language, and I think also we would agree with you that being able to speak more than one language is a huge asset to a person as they grow up. So we definitely want them to embrace two or more languages. There's in Henrico, there's a welcome center, and so if you contact, and if you have other localities, they probably will have something separate. I just know this one off the top of my head that works with parents who have English, who had English as a second language. There are all kinds of resources at the Welcome Center. And so if you contact whatever school where you live, and if you happen to live in Henrico, they will be able to give you I don't know the number off the top of my head. You may even be able to find it on the website. But I would contact the school and just talk with them. They can make you aware of resources. In terms of the decision, I think in the end, I feel like I've said it, in the end, take everything you have available to you. And I also would be important to share your views around language speaking to help the teacher understand and embrace what you're trying to do with your child.
I think that, and Cheryl said it well, we try to prepare children for a world that is a global world, and language and fluency in language is part of that. And we are seeing in the independent school world more and more kindergartners coming in with versatility in more than one language. The competency in English, even if it lags, if you go through an independent school process, that is taken into account. If a child's sort of language background is different, you want there to be enough English for there to be success in the classroom. And I can tell you that in any school you walk into, there are shy children. There are children who are clinging to the back of the leg and not necessarily wanting to take that step. And I believe that teachers who teach kindergarten were put on the earth to be able to manage every kind of personality that is there and have her have that confidence that she'll find it. It's just because she loves you, she's that shy.
There's information on the table if you didn't pick it up when you came in from all of our organizations. Thank you for coming today. Let us know what we can do